Hey everybody, let's do 10 with Tim. Good morning to you. It's 10 o'clock. I'm Tim. Let's go. Good to see you. Happy Wednesday to you. We're going verse by verse through the Bible, and we're in the book of Deuteronomy right now. Deuteronomy chapters 24 and 25. It's one of those sections of rules. We've been in laws now for several days. I don't know how you feel about it. Like I say, I read some of them and I think, oh my goodness, what even was that about? But I'm finding a lot of gems in here too, and I'm just reminded that although the laws often seem strange to us from our modern context, looking back at a very ancient culture, there are principles there that are very understandable, and also you can see how this really is the beginning of the kind of just society that the United States has codified in our own Constitution and our own laws. Some of the laws we have really have roots back in some of the very things we're reading today. For example, I'll just jump right to it. The verse 24, verse 16 that says, parents should not be put to death for the sins of their children. Children shouldn't be put to death for the sins of their parents. That was very common in the ancient world. You actually saw that a lot. There are actually Bible stories that would predate Moses' giving of this law, where that's exactly the way they operated. We would be shocked by that. There's no way that we could even imagine that. And yet at the same time, we don't often realize that, this is just the beginning. God laying out with Moses what a just society looks like. What is fair? What is proper consideration for all people, all citizens, especially the vulnerable. And the Deuteronomical law does that so well. So let's back up. Chapter 24, we'll start with those first verses. These first four verses have to do with laws surrounding marriage, divorce, and remarriage. Now, I know some of you read that and you don't like it, I understand your hesitation with this law. For the one thing, it doesn't grant the woman a lot of rights. Only the man can initiate divorce, and yeah, that sounds terrible. They really didn't recognize a woman's equal access to divorce. And so the man could divorce his wife for nearly any reason. Now, Jesus will later explain that Moses only does it this way because people are crazy and hard-hearted and they don't do marriage well. And so the laws are written just to try to, make life livable and try to protect people. But obviously there's more protection and freedom here for the man, because he can divorce the wife for burning the toast, literally. he can divorce her for any reason. So the law here in the beginning of chapter 24 is related to that. It's not adultery. There's nothing shameful about her. He just found a reason not to like her, so he writes her a bill of divorce. Well, this specific law says she absolutely can go get married again. Now, so again, before you lose your mind that the woman doesn't have the access to divorce, notice that while that's the way the world worked and the law doesn't make any changes to that, the change here, what's being written into law here is the woman's prerogative to go find another husband. If she could not, she has no path to a productive, meaningful life in this culture. I know. You could wish, why can't she get a college degree? I know that's not the world they lived in. Moses is bringing laws for the world they live in, which is in many ways male dominated, patriarchal, you could say, in many matters. And so here you're writing into law the woman's freedom to go find another husband. And then notice what it says. Now, if that other husband don't like her either, the first one can come back and claim her again. And again, that sounds like, what is going on here? What's going on is a protection of the woman. The man, that first guy can't. He has no claim on her anymore. He can't make her come back to him. But also just recognize they're writing into law this respect for marriage. You just can't have this merry-go-round of throwing her out, bringing her back, throwing her out, bringing her back. You can't marry and remarry and marry and remarry. Just no. And so this is a way of codifying the seriousness of marriage, which is not to be made a mockery of. Yeah, understand what I'm saying? It goes on. We talked about this the other day. I love verse 5. It's the second or third time we've run across this. A newly married man can't be drafted in the army because give him a year at home, bringing happiness to the wife he has married. I love that. There's nothing like those early days of marriage, and God knows that. And just says, man, don't be taking that away from a man. Don't take it away from her. I love that. Let that couple alone. Let them enjoy their honeymoon. Let them, get situated. Don't you dare yank that man out of that house. He should be at home bringing happiness to his wife. I just love that. Don't you wish our society still worked, like that? That's just beautiful and brilliant. There are a number of laws in this passage today that have to do with loans. Just remember that there were no commercial loans. We're not getting a loan so maybe I can open my own business. No, that's not what we're talking about. The loans and the regulations surrounding loans in Deuteronomy 24 and 25 are totally loans that are offered in relief to a poor person. These are loans made to somebody who's in poverty. And just notice how it's kind of amazing the way the laws protect the dignity and the basic rights of a vulnerable person, a poor person. So the first thing there is you can't take millstones as collateral for a loan. So it's like, I'll let you borrow my car, but you got to give me your millstones. No, because the millstones are really the only way that this poor family can process grain and therefore have bread. The only way to eat, only way to make a living, their only means of provision for daily necessities. So you can't take that. You take something else. You can take his coon dog, you can take his iPhone, but you cannot take his means of making a living. You see that? And again, we're just trying to preserve the basic dignity and freedom, basic rights of the poor. Skin diseases, you can't kidnap somebody and make him your slave. Do we have to say that? I like this verse 10. If you lend something to your neighbor, you can't go in the house to pick up the item that he's giving us security. You just wait outside to bring it out to you. What's that about? Well, that just means we've agreed that I'm going to loan you my truck today so you can go into town and apply for a job. And in return, you're supposed to bring me whatever, your iPhone, but I can't go in your house and take your iPhone. I have to stay outside, and that's what it means for going inside and say, well, wait just a minute. That's an awful nice laptop you got there. You know what I mean? I don't get to do that. I don't get to go in and see what else is, no, you stay outside. Just because you made him alone don't mean that you can just walk in his house. I love that. Wait outside. If your neighbor is poor and gives you his cloak as security, give it back to him by night. Remember, everybody don't have electric blankets, and there's not bedding the way you think of bedding these days. So often your cloak was your blanket at night. So if you take his cloak, because of a loan you made in the daytime, you cannot keep that cloak overnight. That dude's going to freeze while he sleeps. I love this. Just basic compassion written right into the law. It's just so good. Verse 19 and following have to do with you don't over harvest. What's that about? It's just like if you're picking apples off your apple tree, don't just keep going over the branches over and over and over, because actually leave a few, because that's going to help the poor. Let them come behind you and get what you left. And while you're at it, go ahead and leave some for them. That's just that's just good, just basic compassion. And there's always just remember, you were slaves in Egypt. It's God's way of saying, you've been there, right? You've been there. You've been in a situation where you didn't have anything, and you know what it meant to find something. So won't you just leave something for poor people to find, because you've been there. Just drop it and leave it, and thank God you got enough to share. I just love that. Chapter 25 is pretty short. It has a lot to do with family and community responsibility. Never give more than 40 lashes. In the Jews took that very literally, so they would usually beat you with 39 lashes. They wouldn't give you 40 as a sign of the mercy of God. Thank you for being so merciful. But they took that law very, very literally. Verse 4, you must not muzzle an ox that is treading out the grain. That's used figuratively by Paul later to talk about how ministers deserve to be paid. But it's the idea that, somebody should be able to enjoy the fruits even as they labor, and I think that's pretty good. You got the regulations around levirate marriage, Levirate marriage. Levirate, I think is how you would say it. I've always been confused because I thought that must have something to do with Levites, like Levirate marriage, but it doesn't. Lavir is actually the Latin word for brother-in-law. So what we're talking about here is if a woman has a husband who dies, that husband's brother, her brother-in-law, is obligated to take her in, make her his wife, or otherwise impregnate her so that she can have a son to carry on the brother's name. Now, there are many parts of this that make a lot of sense. It's dumb to us, but it makes a lot of sense in the ancient world. For one thing, it preserves his property. And his, all of this. The woman doesn't really have inheritance rights. It goes to his son. And so it preserves, his property. It preserves his inheritance. It preserves a woman's place in that man's family. There are just so many things that this makes sense in that culture. Again, we ain't going to do it today, but again, Moses is writing laws that are contextual for the world in which they all lived. And that levirate responsibility you find kind of figuring throughout Scripture. I don't really understand verse 11. I mean, I kind of do, but is this a thing? If two Israel men get in a fight and the wife of one tries to rescue her husband by grabbing the private parts of the other man, okay, did this happen all the time? It obviously happened once, and so they had to write a law. I know it just sounds like, what? I mean, that girl fights dirty, and yes, she does. The point of this is that you cannot, in a fight like that, you can't go after a man's ability to procreate. If you were to injure him in those places to the degree where he couldn't have children, or again, what you're doing is a threat, not just to him, but to all his children in the future. And don't forget, in ancient Jewish culture, that man's ability to procreate, the seed in his loins, was very, very important in that culture. And so again, you just, it's one of those don't hit below the belt kind of rules when it comes to fighting. Those last verses there in chapter 25 out of Amalekites bug a lot of people because it's just like, why do you hate the Amalekites so bad? And man, all through the Old Testament, they hate the Amalekites. I mean, and we've read other places where, it's all got to do with the Amalekites. And you're reading the book of Esther, and that had to do with the Amalekites. I mean, everything's Amalekites. Anyway, it is an ancient, an ancient, feud kind of between the Jews and the Amalekites. It has to do with the history described in this passage here. And it just says, don't forget what they did to us. Don't never forget what they did to us. Anyway, it's a feud that, wasn't going to be over anytime soon, looking from Deuteronomy chapter 25. Anyway, I'm just interested in some of that. I think it's kind of interesting. We'll pick up here tomorrow. We'll slow down a bit. We'll do chapter 26, just 19 verses. I'm going easy on you people. Deuteronomy chapter 26, verses 1 to 19 for tomorrow. Listen, it's beautiful today. I got a funeral. I'm preaching Tom Gentry's funeral today. What a good man. What a good man. Pray for Joyce and that family. And anyway, I will see you tomorrow, Lord willing, 10 o'clock for 10 with Tim. I love you guys. Have a great, it's Wednesday. Have a great Wednesday.